What's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new episode of Dieting from the Inside Out. If you are new here, welcome to the show. My name is Jared Hamilton and my mic is loose, so excuse the rattling. Hopefully you are doing well and having a great weather start into your week. I don't really know. I'm recording this on a Friday, so if you're listening to this on a Friday or the day I'm recording it, I hope you are having a good end to your week. But nonetheless, we are going to get into all the goodies today, and I am so excited to come at you with another episode. Guys, I'm telling you, I'm really enjoying finally hitting a groove with the podcast. It's been cool having like a lot of my other, I don't know what we maybe call it, big rocks taken care of, where like I can now actually like really prioritize the podcast and get you guys as best content and help as I can. So be sure, if you are enjoying the podcast, be sure to number one, subscribe to wherever you're listening on. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, even it's on YouTube now. Like if you like to watch your podcasts and not just listen to them, kind of like Joe Rogan style, then go head over to my YouTube and I have all the episodes right there. And I've been really enjoying that. So I really appreciate it. Be sure and subscribe wherever you're listening. But then also if you're listening on like Apple Podcast, or I think Spotify has a review section now, I can't remember. Be sure and review the podcast. It means a ton and it helps out a lot. Like with what, when it comes to like this kind of like creative stuff, or like you have your favorite creators that you follow, like podcasters, things like that, and or YouTube, like YouTube creators or whatever it is, the more that you can engage with that, like with reviews and subscriptions and all of that, it makes a bigger difference than you'd think. So if you could do that for me, it would mean the world, especially if you're getting a lot of value out of the episode. So but otherwise, before we get into the cool stuff, because today's episode, I'm actually took this as a kind of a request. One of the things that I have my staff do is like inside, like, my community, like my Fat Loss Simplified community, it's kind of like my home base for the people that really want to take their stuff to the next level. It's just my free community. If you're not part of it, you should totally join it. I have my staff that's helping me in there with that, like my CSMs, my community success managers, kind of like keep me updated on like ideas of content that I should make or trainings I should do or whatever the case is. And one of the ones that kind of has been showing through a lot is is just like the nuts and bolts of how to be consistent. And I think that's what we're going to get into today. Like we're calling it like the keys of consistency, or like, to be honest, like they're kind of hacks to being consistent. If anything, like that'd probably be a better title. I might change the name of it. I don't know. Either way, we're talking about like the different keys to being consistent, but more or less, like I'm a fan of like hacks to make things work. Because like my thing is, we all know we should be consistent, but at the end of the day, like it's not just enough to know, oh yeah, I should be more consistent. It's like, what is the actual tactics to make being consistent less difficult and to have less friction, to be easier? So that's what we're going to get into today, is little hacks on that, on things that you can do to be more consistent. But before we get into that, I do need to have a big thank you to the sponsors of the show. Sponsor number one is Flex Pro meals. You want to talk about a hack to being consistent, is have Flex Pro all up in your fridge. Guys, one of the reasons I've been able to be more consistent with my nutrition, other than like the normal stuff, is that like I just have my fridge full of Flex Pro meals. Like on deck, I always have meals in there. I don't eat them every single meal, but for times where like we are behind on groceries, for times where like I don't feel like eating what we made or whatever the case is, or I'm out and about, or if I had $1 every time I was on the way out the door or coming up here to the studio to record and I needed to eat, I just threw it in the microwave, grabbed it, and went out the door, came up here. Because at the end of the day, if you cannot be consistent with something, it's worthless. So for me, having Flex Pro like literally up my ass every day, it just makes it easier to be really, really consistent, because the meals are made by a chef. They taste amazing. They're cheaper than fast food, and they're dialed in when it comes to your goals, like your calories, your protein, your macros, things like that. It's funny. I get a lot of questions on social media, like private messages, like, okay, tell me, how does it really taste? Like, come on, how do you actually feel about it? And I'm like, I'm not fucking lying to you. Their food's fantastic. I have, of course, meals of theirs that I like more than others. And I'm very blunt about which ones I prefer and which ones I'm just not a fan of, just like normal food taste. But overall, like as a whole, I love their shit. It's so good. So anyway, if that's your cup of tea, first of all, thank you to them for sponsoring the show, but also go to flexpromeals.com or just check out their menu. It's crazy what they even make in like somehow magically works in your numbers. But if you're going to buy anything, I do want to save you some money, and it supports me, and I thank you in advance for that. The code is Hamilton Trained at checkout. It'll save you 20%. So on top of cheaper than fast food, it's going to save you even more money. So big thank you to them. And then sponsor number two is my friends over at First Form. Big thank you to First Form. Guys, I'm telling you, you like across the board, you cannot get better and more consistent and covers everything than First Form. I love the fact that I can like have all of our clients go to just them whenever we need to talk about supplements. Everything from like their newest product, which is the energy drinks. Literally, they came out with a version or like an actual energy drink that tastes so good that has just enough caffeine, like 200 milligrams. So I don't like, I'm trying to dial personally my caffeine back. So I don't want necessarily 350 milligrams a day. I'd like, 200 or around there. And the fact that they taste so fucking good, it's insane. But to their protein powder, protein bars, I eat their protein bars all the time. Their pre-workouts are some of my favorite I've ever had, just across the board, guys. Like whether you're a fan of like taking a lot of stuff or you take bare bones like a multivitamin and fish oil, you're covered. And you just can't get better than that on how they treat their staff, how they treat their customers, and the ethics in which they stand behind everything. So massive thank you to them. And I do have a free priority shipping link in the description. Just click that. And not only, again, does it support me, I definitely want to own that and I really appreciate it, but it also is going to save you some money on shipping. So big thank you to them. But now let's get into the nuts and bolts of today's episode, talking about the keys to consistency, or if we're being honest, the hacks to consistency. So that's what we're going to get into, because here's the thing. I was actually going to bring it off my shelf and show you guys here on the video. But one of my favorite books in the world of habits and consistency is by a guy named James Clear. James Clear has a book called Atomic Habits. If you have not read it and you are into this kind of stuff, holy shit, you're going to be blown away. I'm actually considering reaching out to James's people and seeing if he would be down to come on the podcast, if enough of you guys would be interested in that. For those that really like his book, it's really popular. So the thing is, though, James Clear is such an amazing strategy behind habits. And that's where I get a lot of my information. Is one of my favorite spots was his book, Atomic Habits. So I'm going to basically take some of my favorite hacks and tricks and secrets to being consistent. And that's what we're going to get into here. Because the truth is, at the end of the day, you have to understand when it comes to consistency, like if you have none, nothing will happen. If you have no consistency, it doesn't matter like how good your plan is. It doesn't matter how great your strategy is. It doesn't matter who your coach is. It doesn't matter any of that, because if you cannot be consistent, you're fucked. Literally, like, why do you think, like, as an adult, you probably don't get, cavities very much, or if at all, because you're consistently brushing your teeth? Why do you think your car never runs out of gas? Because you consistently keep it full. Right? Like, it doesn't matter the strategy, the plan, if what your actions are doing are not consistent. It's just how the game works. You have to be able to be ungodly consistent to have any chance of success with anything. Like, think about it in your work, in your marriage, in your money, in your partnerships, in everything. So that's the big thing, is if we can't learn how to be consistent, though, how to truly make consistency be true for us, then nothing else matters. So let's pump the brakes a little bit on like having the best program, how to optimize everything, how to lose fat as fast as possible. Like, let's pump the brakes on that and actually sit down and go, okay, what habits can I actually be consistent with? Because again, without habits, you're not going to have outcomes, right? But let's get into that. Because here's the thing, where most people go wrong is where they lack in consistency. They try to make up for an effort and intensity. Think about that. Where most people lack in consistency, they try to make up for it in effort and intensity. How many times have you, let's say, how many times do you or have you seen, let's say someone, they can't be consistent. Sorry, my nose. I swear every time I do a podcast, my nose is just like a motherfucker. So if you're watching the video, I've been scratching it like crazy. Anyway, but like I said, from where most people go wrong is that if they can't be consistent, they try to make up for an effort and intensity. So like, how many times do you see someone, or maybe you personally, can't be consistent for, let's say, 3 days with your workouts or going on walks or whatever? So you go to 5, right? Let's say you can't be consistent eating 1,800 calories a day. So you're like, fuck it, I'll just go to 13. Right? Oh, I can't be consistent just drinking water. So I'm going to now go buy a gallon of water and make myself drink it every day. You have to understand that that's not a good strategy. Like in jujitsu, like you guys know, I love my jujitsu analogies. In jujitsu, where a lot of people lack in technique, they make up for in brute effort. But that's an easy way in jujitsu to get your ass kicked by a guy that does know more. So it's the same thing here. So if you look at your situation and you're not very consistent, do you try to make up for that in effort and just, force and intensity? Like if you're not very good at like being, tracking your calories, do you like try to go extra rigid? If you're not very good at moderation with your favorite foods, do you go cold turkey on your favorite foods? Because that's not the answer. You have to understand, like, even if you could go cold turkey, even if you could train 5-6 days a week, even if you could do the more optimal or intense program or protocol or whatever, if you can't be consistent with that, it's going to fall. You're going to break. You're going to go back to square one. This is something that we really try to hammer home with clients, because 9 times out of 10, when someone comes to work with us, we have to dial back. It's like they're eating 1,200 calories, can't lose weight. So like the answer is not to do more workouts, do more cardio and take calories lower. The answer is like, we need to pump the brakes on weight loss and go through maintenance periods and like our dieting from the inside out stage and fix all this shit. Because the answer is not to just go harder, because eventually you're going to break. If what you're doing is not sustainable, then nothing else matters. If the journey is not sustainable, the result will not be sustainable either. Does that make sense? Because it's just how the game works, where the answer is never like, you can't be consistent. It's like, if you can't adhere to one thing, let's just not make the rules harder. You're just not going to be adhering even further. It doesn't even make sense logically, but that's what most people do. So let's get in, because I know I've already been talking for like 10 minutes. So let's get into like, what are these actual like keys to consistency, or these hacks to actually make you more consistent. All right. Here's the thing. I want you to take everything you know about habits and inconsistency right now and just throw it out the window. Just for the next like 10, 15 minutes or however long I'm going to talk, I want you to like just be a total open mind with what I'm about to say, because your old mental programming is probably going to have issues with what I'm about to show you. But the truth is, like, if what you're doing is not working, you need to be able to scrap it anyway. You see? So let's get into this. Number one, as we're talking hacks to making yourself consistent, number one is you have to make it simple and take away all the moving parts. Okay. In weight loss, how many times have you you sucked at your weight loss journey? You can't lose weight. So you're trying to make it more complicated and more complex. Or someone like me says, hey, just eat in a calorie deficit and that's about it. Or, hey, just strength train for like 30 minutes. But then part of your brain goes, no, it can't be that simple. No, it can't be that easy. No, it has to be like this. Well, again, showing up for yourself is hard enough, let alone making this game complex and complicated is the worst move you could ever make, because now it's just even more friction. The goal is to take friction away. One of my mentors, my current mentor right now, one of the best things he ever told me on our very first call, he said, Jared, simplicity scales and fancy always fails. And I'm never going to show you anything fancy. Everything I'm going to show you is only simple. To be honest with you, I was like, when he told me that, I'm like, fuck, what'd I pay for? Like, I literally just signed up with him and I'm like, I want all the tricks. I want all the fancy dancy stuff. And he goes, nah, man, like simple is what's scalable. If you're looking to scale your results, simple is the answer. Fancy just fails, right? If you can't do the simple stuff at a high level, it doesn't matter what fancy bullshit I show you. It's not going to work. It's not going to matter. And that hit home. So for you, are you trying to do all the fancy stuff? Are you trying to like make it as complicated as you can? Like 9 times, like literally in almost all cases with coaching, like when people who sign up for coaching, they're shocked how simple we make the program. We even have people who we'll like give them their program and they're like, there's no way. They're like, there's no way this is going to work. Because what they were coming from was complex. What they were coming from was overwhelming. What they were coming from was all the things, all the friction, all the overwhelming amounts of habits. But then we have them do like 2 things, 3 things max. And all of a sudden they get better results than they've ever gotten in their life with the least amount of effort and the least amount of friction. They go, I don't understand how this is happening. That's how we do this right. That's how you go about this the right way. So that's why hack number 1 is make it simple and take away all the moving parts. So in weight loss, are you counting all the macros? Are you trying to do all the crazy workouts? Are you working out 7 days a week? Are you doing cardio, Zumba, CrossFit, eating keto, paleo while fasting, and doing all this stuff? Like, it's too much. It's too complicated. What can you strip away? What can you take away to make this game way more simple? Almost too simple. Okay, that's hack number 1. Hack number 2, this one's huge. We're thinking about, here's the thing, we're talking about habits. We're not talking about just the result. We're talking about the habits that lead to results. Make it obvious or out in the open. This was a big one in James Clear's book. Make the habit obvious or out in the open. So here's what I mean by that. Let's say let's give a non-weight loss example. Let's say, actually, here's a great one. A lot of you guys know part of my story, my personal story is before I got into like fitness and coaching, my big thing was drums. I still play drums. Like one of my favorite things ever is getting on my kit and playing. Like it was my first business. I taught drum lessons. Like before I got in the fitness realm and fell in love with that. I took drum lessons for 8 years. I went through 3 instructors and it was my baby. Drums was my thing. It was my first business. When I was 15, I had my own students and I was teaching them and everything. Well, when it comes to how this applies here is whenever at my old house, so a lot of you guys know we just moved 5-6 months ago, my drum kit is in the basement. Okay. I spend most of my day up here in my office/studio. Okay. Well, at my old house, my office was our garage. We pimped out the garage and my office was the garage. Well, you know what else was in the garage was my drum kit. You know how often I played my drum kit because like I was between calls and I'm like, oh, I got 30 minutes. I just hopped onto my kit and played it because it was behind me. You know, like if you go back in some of my older videos, you can see it in the background behind me. Well, we're at the new house and I'm in the second story where my studio up here is at, what you're watching or listening to me from. So my drum kit is actually in the basement. We never go down in the basement, like or we do, but like the dogs go down there and play or whatever. But like we don't like do as much down there compared to the rest of the house. So you know how little I play my drums now? Like I have to intentionally go down and play. Actually, to be honest, I haven't played them once since we've moved to this house, right? That's how powerful making the habit you're trying to work on obvious and out in the open. So like the reason I bring that up is what habit are you sucking at that you're not consistent with? Is it obvious and out in the open, right? If you're trying to drink more water, do you have the water hidden in the house? Like your water, like in the back of the fridge? Or do you have a water bottle with you all the time? I can tell you right now, like if you're watching the video, I always have this black water bottle with, it has a First Form sticker and my Hamilton Trained logo on. Well, it's a beat up sticker now, but like I have this, it follows me around every day. Well, and so I drink a lot more water when that thing doesn't leave my side, just by nature of it being in the obvious and out in the open. But when I don't have my water with me, I hardly drink water. I'm not consistent with it because it's not obvious out in the open. If you have trouble making better decisions, let's say you have a hard time eating, I don't know, fruit and you eat way too many cookies. Well, if I walked into your kitchen right now, what's out in the open? What's out in the obvious? The better choices, the water, the fruit on your countertop, the protein bars, the beef jerky, or are those things hidden away in the cupboard or in the fridge and the Oreos are out on the counter, or the Pop-Tarts on the counter, the cereal, whatever it is. Not that those things are bad, but like keep this in context. If you're having trouble with a habit, how obvious and out in the open and frictionless is that habit? Think about it. If you're trying to learn to play guitar, well, if you're trying to get as good as you can at guitar and you need to practice every day, should you have the guitar in the closet when you're not practicing or have it hanging on the wall or on a stand in the living room? If you make it out in the open and obvious, it makes it so much easier. Out of sight, out of mind has never been more true. So when you're struggling with your habits, whatever habit you're doing, make it obvious and out in the open where you see that motherfucker all the time. And on its inverse, if there's a habit you're trying to break, take it from out in the obvious to put some distance with it, right? Like if you're struggling with, I don't know, your food choices, not that like any food is bad, but like what if you have so much trouble around controlling yourself around ice cream, well, what if you made it a golden rule? You have to go out of the house to get the ice cream, right? If you're struggling with ice cream being in the house and eating all of it, like I have a whole nother talk on how to fix your relationship with food. But like, what if you made it a rule? Like ice cream's not bad, but you got to go get it from the ice cream shop down the road. You'll eat so much less ice cream because it's now harder to get to. It's not as obvious out in the open versus if it's in your house. You see what I mean? So if you have habits you're trying to break, make them less obvious and out in the open. And if you have habits you're trying to get better at, think, how can I make them obvious and out in the open? Hopefully that makes sense. Next, this is one of my favorite ones. The habit you're struggling with. Because again, we're talking about how to be consistent. We're not trying to force things to happen and just work harder. We're trying to make these hacks to be more consistent with whatever your habit, whatever the habit is. Next, pair it with a habit you're already crushing with. Give it a buddy. My favorite thing is when like we have clients, like most all clients journal or do like some form of meditation for some of their inner game issues. Well, when a client's like, Jared, I always forget to journal or I can't be consistent with it. I go, okay, well, what's a habit you've been ruthlessly consistent with? And they go, I don't know. And I go, okay, brushing your teeth. Everyone listening to this has been ruthlessly brushing your teeth for decades on end, right? You're half asleep and arguably unconscious when you do it anyway. So what if we put the habit you suck at, journaling in this case, with brushing your teeth? Now every time you brush your teeth, you got to journal. Boom, you'll instantly be consistent because it's with a habit you're already consistent with, right? Like let's say you're not very good at being grateful. Well, what if your coffee you drink every morning, you make that your trigger to be grateful, like gratitude journal. Just think about how grateful you are for whatever. You know what I mean? Make it with a buddy. Here, let's say you suck at tracking your calories. Let's say you always aren't consistent with tracking your calories. Well, what if you put your calorie tracking app next to the Facebook or Instagram app? So now every time you go to hop on Facebook or Instagram, well, fuck, I got to log my calories for my last meal. You see, there's all sorts of ways we can do this, and I don't want to tell you all of them. I just want to give you some frameworks so you can think critically about what you can do. So think of whatever habit you're struggling with. What can you do? Or I'm sorry, what other habit can you pair it with to make it way more seamless? That way it has its buddy. Okay. Next, this is a big one. This is a really good one. I have a funny story about it too. The next one, basically making it an ultimatum of stuff you can't not do. Here's what I mean by that. If you have a habit you suck at, give it an ultimatum that like, you cannot do this until you do this. So for example, when someone says, Jared, I suck at drinking water. And let's say they drink a lot of not water, like pop, soda, coffee, tea, juice, milk, all that, beer. Literally, I'll go, okay, you can have all the soda in the world you want, but you've got to drink X much water before you're allowed to have soda. Right? Or like things like that. Like, let's say you suck at drinking water, but you really drink diet sodas all day or regular sodas all day. Well, like, okay, cool. Well, you have to match it now. Before you can have a can of soda, you have to have the equivalent of a can of water. Before you can have a beer, you have to have the equivalent of a water. Like, it's an ultimatum, right? Or this was a funny one. When I was a little kid, the whole drums thing again. When I was 13 when I started playing drums. Well, I loved playing drums. It was all I cared about. It was my obsession. It was my hobby. It was everything. I played drums. Well, I was also a fat, weak little dude when I was like young, when I was really little, when I was like 13, 14, 15. Well, I really wanted to be able to do push-ups. And I would complain to my mom that I could not do push-ups. And my mom said, okay, you're not allowed to practice your drums until you do push-ups. And I'm like, what? Because I would play drums for hours every single day. I would go down into our old basement when I was a little kid and I would play drums for hours. Well, the thing is though, my mom said, because she got tired of hearing me bitch about not being able to do push-ups. So she said, all right, you're not allowed to practice your drums until you do 3 sets of push-ups. You know how, and I'm telling you guys, I learned to do push-ups that fast because I didn't even care about the push-ups. I'm like, well, I want to play my drums. I do 3 sets, then get on my kit and play. So for you, if you suck at being consistent with whatever habit, give yourself an ultimatum. You're not allowed to watch TV at night till you track your calories. You're not allowed to watch TV until you get your workout in. You're not allowed to feed your kids until you do your thing for you. Because here's the thing, you're not going to not take care of your kids. I was talking to a friend the other day who sucks at journaling and she's really trying to get good at journaling. I said, you're not allowed to feed your dog until you journal. Here's the thing, you're not going to not feed your dog. You're not going to not take care of your kids. Don't take this out of context. But there's also a level of you can't help other people until you're helped yourself. So if you make it an ultimatum, mom can't take care of the kids until mom takes care of her. You see, and if you have a habit you suck at, you're not going to let your major responsibilities fall, right? If you like get home from work and you need to go get your workout in, but then you need to get ready for dinner for the kids, you go, okay, I can't make the kids dinner until I get my workout in. So you'll go home, get the workout in, then get back to get ready for the kids. But this is a way where you can give yourself these mini ultimatums. Like, I'm not allowed to play video games until I get my workout in. I'm not allowed to watch TV until I read 10 minutes in a personal development book, whatever it is. But giving yourself these little like golden rules or little ultimatums and sticking to them changes everything. All right, next. This one kind of goes back to number 1, but it's a little bit different. Make it the habit as easy, or it's basically as easy as fuck. Literally, what do you have to do? Like, look at it, whatever you're doing. How can you make this as easy as fuck? Or I would just say easier not to do. Like, think about making your bed. Making your bed's not hard, but most people don't do it because it's easier not to make it, right? So if you're, let's say, working out, let's say you go to the gym and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't be consistent in the gym. What can you do to just make it easier? I'm not saying make everything easy because that's not the solution. I'm a very big believer in doing things that are hard, but kind of going back to what can you do to make it simple? What can you do to make it easier? If you suck at tracking your food, well, maybe it's because you're trying to track calories, protein, fats, carbs, fiber, water, steps, the whole 9 yards. What if you just make it easier and simpler and track just calories and protein? Let's say that's too much. What if you just track protein? I think it's really hard. If you have a protein target and a fiber target, it's really hard to overeat. Right? Like, what can you do to just make it easier? Let's say you go out to dinner and you always lose it. You always lose your nutrition and overeat. What if you just make it a rule to make it easy that you just order a to-go container with your meal, you instantly put half your meal in the to-go container, then smash your plate. Done. There's your calorie deficit. Think about what you can do to make it easier, because if it's easier, it goes back to that rule of there's not as much friction. Now you can execute. All right. And last one. We're talking about hacks to consistency. Make it sustainable. look at this thing at scale. You have to look at this thing from like the next like 20 years away. What can you do on your worst day for the next 20 years? That's how you have to look at this thing. Your best days are already amazing. Your best days, you're already kicking ass and taking names and doing really well. So the question is, what do you need to do to make this, the habits you're trying to be consistent with, scalable for the next 20 years? Especially on the bad days. You ever notice on your worst days, you still brush your teeth? The worst days, you still go to work and get your 9 to 5 in. Your worst days, you still make your kids food. It may be pizza that night, but you still took care of your kids. Put this stuff into the same light. What can you do to make this simple? What can you do to make this not just simple, yes, but sustainable forever? Right? Let's say it's your nutrition you're struggling with. Well, what if you're making weird rules where you have to have good foods and bad foods and cheat days and you can't have carbs? Well, that's not very fucking sustainable. You know, eating all foods being okay to eat, eating mostly whole foods and having anything else every day in moderation, that seems pretty sustainable, pretty simple, pretty obvious. It matches all this checklist. This is how I want you to start thinking about your habits. It's a game changer. Has to be sustainable. All right, that is it. That is my list of the keys to consistency, or I think I'm probably going to call it something around hacks, because I think these are a little bit more hacky versus just like the ushy-gushy consistency talk. So I'm going to fly through these really quickly, just in case you didn't take notes, just to kind of like rapid fire. The first one, the key, the consistency hacks is number 1, make it simple and take away all the moving parts. Okay. Number 2 is make it obvious and put it out in the open. Number 3, pair it with a habit you're already crushing with. Pair it with something that you're already really, really consistent with. Number 4, make it an ultimatum of stuff you can't not do, or the stuff you really love doing. Like you can't watch TV that night till you track your calories. You can't, whatever, that kind of thing. Number 5, I think, make it easy as fuck, or just easier not to do. Kind of goes back to taking the moving parts away. What can you do to make this easy, just blatantly easy, where all you have to do is execute? And the last one, number 6, I think. Yeah, 6. Make it sustainable. It has got to be sustainable. So that is it, my friends. That is it for today's episode of Dieting from the Inside Out. I'm so grateful you were here. Actually, it makes me wonder, did I say Dieting from the Inside Out in the intro? I can't remember now, because a lot of you guys know that like the podcast used to be called the Hamilton Trained Podcast, and I catch myself still saying that sometimes in the intro. So I can't remember if I said the Hamilton Trained Podcast, but either way, or if I said Dieting from the Inside Out or the Hamilton Trained Podcast. Either way, we're rolling with this. David, just keep it rolling. I don't give a fuck. But otherwise, that is it for today's episode. I really appreciate you guys being here. Be sure and check out all the good stuff I have for you in the description. I have a lot. I have my that home base I keep telling you about, the Fat Loss Simplified, my community, where like when you need a home base, everyone needs a home base where you can go to that. You can get loved on, you can get support, you can ask questions, and you can get help. And best of all, it's free. Guys, you won't find another community like this that I put this much attention and time in a culture of amazing people. And it's not going to cost you a dime. You're going to get like more out of this than most people's paid programs. So you can go join that. I also have my free course. If you're like from the fat loss side, you're just like, I don't know where to go or where to get started. Go check out my fat loss checklist. It's in the description as well. If you're not following me on my other shorter, smaller platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and you like the short form content, I got all sorts of stuff there for you. And then also be sure and check out my coaching link below as well. If you are in a spot where you are tired of guessing and you are tired of doing this on your own and you are tired of the struggle and you've been struggling for years and you think you're probably going to struggle for years to come, it has never been a better time to get involved in coaching and get help and streamline this for you. And because you are a podcast listener, I have a hellacious opportunity for you. And I don't talk about this anywhere else. Just because you are listening to the podcast and the podcast is one of my biggest focuses, I have a very, very, very special offer for people who come from the podcast only. When it comes to coaching, I'm not going to give away all the secrets, but we'll just say there's about $4,000 worth of free stuff you'll be getting if you sign up for coaching from the podcast. But here's the thing. We don't just sign up anyone. There's actually not anywhere on the internet you can just sign up for coaching. We have to make sure this is a good fit. We only work with people we know we can help, and we want you to understand everything that goes on in coaching so you can make sure this is what you're ready for. But because you're coming from the podcast, not only do I have a special offer for you that's basically going to give you about $4,000 worth of free stuff, when you sign up for coaching, but then also you get to bypass the most of the application where you can just go straight to my team's schedule. Because like I said, before we can do anything with coaching, we got to learn more about you. We got to see what's going on. We got to make sure we think we can help. We got to make sure that this is a good fit. So we require a phone call just to go over everything with you and get to know you a little bit more. So to do that, just down in the description below, you can schedule your call with my team, and that's it. You can get right onto the schedule. You'll be one of the first ones there. Not one of the first ones there, but you'll be one of the, instead of having to go through like an application process, then get the schedule, because you're coming from the podcast, I like to reward that, and you can go right to the schedule right now, and that's it. And then we'll schedule it and give you all the details and see if this is a good fit or not. But otherwise, guys, that is it for today's episode. I really appreciate you being here. Be sure and subscribe, and then leave a review on the podcast. I love you, and I'll talk to you soon.